Clark, welcome to Emanate.
Thank you. It's great to be here in such giant size behind your shoulders.
I'm still thinking the same thing. Last time we did this, it's just like the scene from like the space movie when the evil captain takes over the ship's screen.
Yes.
It's like, I will destroy you now. That's all that's in my head every time we do this.
That's funny.
You're the evil captain.
I hold no threat of destruction.
So I'm sitting here with Rob Alley. You know Rob.
Yeah.
Rob is a great songwriter. I am a songwriter of some level. I don't know. I'll let others decide. Clark, you are a great songwriter. And we have 29 minutes and 12 seconds to kind of glean some information from you about songwriting. So we're not going to waste any time. Is that okay?
Love it.
I joked with Rob, the first thing we were going to ask you to do is to define songwriting. But I'm not going to ask you to do that because we would like to define it for the purposes of this discussion as writing songs. If that's okay.
Do we need to pause so I can write that down?
Yes. Okay, we're good. So, Clark, I've had the opportunity, a lot of us had to work with you. I want to ask you, I'm just going to ask you things that I'm curious about, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So my first question is, and this is always my question, if you write 100 songs, how many of them make it into the public square?
My writing volume is actually quite lower than most, and my percentage of what actually makes it to the public square, as you say, is a lot higher than most. So for me, I would say like 75% of what I write, I'll put out. I think what also causes that to happen is when I'm not into a song, I won't finish it. Like I'm like, nope. I'm really quick to scrap something. So if I write a song fully, typically the ones that don't make it is the ones where I'm writing it and I'm like, this is awesome. And I finish it, I'm like, great, we finished it, this is awesome. And then the next day I listen to it and I'm like, wow, this sucks. Which happens to everyone that I've talked to that's a songwriter. There's so many times where you're writing and you're like, man, this is great, and you're feeling it. And then a couple days later, you listen back, you're like, wow, that's bad. Like, that's no good. So those are the ones that don't make it. So I'd say like 25% of the time I finish a song and I feel like it's great and I'm wrong and it's not good. But the ones that I'm like not into, I don't even finish them. I just move on to something else.
Do you trash those completely, like erase from digital history? Or like, do you save them just in case like down the road something comes back to them?
I'm a little bit on the side of hoarding in general, like in my life. I actually have, I don't know why, but I have a folder in my hard drive of like songs that suck. Like just terrible songs that I'll never release and I hate them. And they're there. And I don't know why I just don't delete them, but they're there. So I don't know why, but I keep them, not with the intention of coming back to them and maybe there's something there. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's for like a seminar of like, look how terrible I used to be, you know.
And exercise in humility.
Yeah.
I have that folder too, and sometimes I'll go searching for a song that I want to show somebody, and I'm like, oh, I think this is it. And I start playing it, and I'm like, nope, stop, that wasn't it. Okay. So yeah, I have the folder of terrible songs. I actually have them ranked. I have a folder called Never that are just really bad songs, and then I have one WIP, which is work in progress that I'm not working on. They just maybe one day it might be worth it to go back. Do you think that? I feel like in my experience, and this is common with a lot of songwriters, is that what would be considered the better songs usually come with greater ease. Have you found that? That like, if you're trying to like force this song out, that it's like, okay, but maybe there's a song where it's just like, it's already written, you're just pulling it out of the air, like, and it's easy. Have you noticed
Right.
that with yourself?
Yeah, I would say it's like 50-50 for me, where, well, when songs just happen like super fast, like you said, it's like it's already there, you're just kind of pulling it out of the air, and you don't feel like you're working for it at all. Most of the time, those songs are great. But there have been songs that have been laborious and felt like you were just digging a ditch, like with your bare hands, like so much work to unveil this song, and it comes out great. Uh, and then sometimes, I would say maybe 70% of the time, when you're really having to work for it, it doesn't come out great. But I've had songs that I'm in a writing session with someone else, and we're just freaking digging and trying our hardest, and sometimes, not most of the time, but sometimes they come out fantastic. But yeah, the dream is when you start writing and it's just flowing and it just comes out. Like, if that's what songwriting was most of the time, people would write for like every day just for fun. But for the most part, for me anyway, and most people that I talk to, songwriting is a labor. It is like, it can feel like work often.
I think this is Michael Farron, but if I'm misattributing this, it's whatever. But he said, don't just write when you're inspired, write until the song is inspired. Like, you know what I mean? And you were talking about like unveiling a song, like that idea of like, I've got this slate of marble and I'm gonna sculpt away at it to reveal what I see inside it, you know what I mean? And then sometimes you get in there and you're like, oh, well, all right, that wasn't that good to begin with. Like, what I thought was inside it just wasn't there. But, but the good ones, you go, there's the vision that I had.
Yep, exactly.
The one thing I'm always interested about, like when you're involved in music, you get in the room with some really awesome people that you look up to sometimes, whether that be in interviewing people, you find yourself in a studio, you find yourself working with different people. I would be interested to know, like, if you could take us into one or two of those rooms that you've been in, Clark. I know you've just been exposed to such like massive talent and worked with a lot of people. Like, is there things that you've gleaned from people that you would say are like doing it at the highest level? Or is there advice that you've gotten that, maybe just a couple things that have really stuck with you that you would share with somebody?
Yeah, first room or person that comes to mind, my very first songwriting session, my very first co-writing session with anyone ever was Brian McKnight, right after American Idol. And I went to his house and sat down at his piano with him, and it was crazy and it was cool, but it was terrifying. And again, I had never written a song with someone before. I'd never done this as a co-writing thing, and here's my first time as Brian McKnight. And it took me probably an hour to gain the courage to make a musical opinion and tell him what I thought. Because when you're doing a songwriting session with someone, your job is to vet their ideas as their job is to vet yours. So for me to look at Brian McKnight and be like, yeah, what about this chord progression instead? Like, how could I possibly, and it took me a long time, or like, what about this? I don't know about that lyric. What about this? Or what about this melody? Like, I just couldn't, and it was really tough. And then eventually I started to, and of course he's a professional and a really nice guy, so he needed it. And when I started saying like suggestions and opinions, he like took them very well. He's like, yeah, no, you're right. And then he started doing the same to me. And that's so important about songwriting, is co-writing especially, it's a balance of trusting yourself versus trusting your co-writer, knowing that they're coming at it from an objective standpoint where you're going to be naturally biased to your own ideas, and knowing that their job is to tell you when your ideas aren't good and when they are good. And typically you'll know it when you say something, and you might not be confident in your opinion or not, but you might have an idea and you say something. Typically they'll go, "Ooh, yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good." Okay, great. We're writing that one down. Or you'll say something like an idea, and they're like, you're both thinking of what the line could be, and then you say an idea that you really like, and then they don't leave their thinking face. They're just like, yeah. That's when you're like, okay, bad idea. It's not good. Something that you in return, on the other side of it, you can do that as well. When they say an idea that you're not really into, you can kind of keep that, like, you don't have to say, "I don't like that idea." You just be like, yeah. And one thing you can say is, "I think we can do better." That's a common line I'll say. Or, "Yeah, that's close." Or just say the truth. Like, "That's the idea. Yeah, I think we can say something more poetic." Or, "I think we need to stay on topic." Or, well, it kind of, and just kind of be open for that, be open to receive it too. Another room that you guys may know this person or may not, but she's one of those people that when you look her up on, Google, you're like, "Oh my gosh, she wrote that and that and that and that." Her name's Mia Fields. She's really popular and successful in like worship music. And I was writing a song with her, and one thing I learned from her is never be married to a line. She is so fast to try another line. Like, it's so easy to get really locked in to one line that has a cool analogy that you like, or an alliteration, or some type of musical or poetic quality that you enjoy, and then just try to make everything else fit around it. Her, like, she gives it 10 seconds. Like, we'll be like, "Oh, that's such a good line." And then we'll try the next line or the one before to try to make the rhyme work. And like 15 seconds later, she's trying another line. So she's so fast to just continue to let lines come out, and you work a lot faster that way. And that's one thing, is just never be, you have a line that you like, there's more. There's another one that's going to be just as good or better. Don't be married to it and waste your time taking 45 minutes trying to find a line that works with the one line that you could just scrap and move on.
What would you say to somebody who is maybe either they write words but not music, or vice versa, right? And they're trying to find their, like, like, I'm sure you've had the experience where certain people, like, yeah, I can write a song with you, but there's certain people that, like, you get in a room with them and it's magic. It just kind of happens naturally. Yeah. What are the things for you that trying to find co-writers who you really gel with that have helped you to, like, be able to establish good writing relationships with people?
Yeah, I think one important thing is know your things and know your strengths and your weaknesses. My strengths would be chord possession. It's football season.
It's when you really own a chord, like solid.
When you really own a chord, yeah. Chord progressions and melody, and concept. So just song concepts and ideas of what we want to say. A lot of times I need a great lyricist. Sometimes I'll work on lyrics and I'm like, "Oh, great, I did the thing." Like, those are great lyrics, but that's not something that comes out all the time. So one mistake I made early on was I would find this musician that I really loved. There's this guy on Instagram his name's Todd Pritch. His Instagram, his name might have been Pritchard, but anyway, Todd Pritch is what we'll call him. And he was this brilliant, super clean electric guitar player that would just come up with these gorgeous chords and chord progression, and his playing was crazy. He didn't sing or anything like that, but his chord progressions and that stuff was so good. So I reached out to him, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do a writing session." And I was so excited. I was like, "All right." And he's in Nashville, so he came over to the house, And the song idea that I picked for him was this really cool, like progression. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it super well in the electric, but it was like, gosh, if I can remember it. Ooh. Oh gosh. Just a second, it'll be worth it. It was, pretend that B string sounds good. Okay. So it's like, so it's this weird, like cool, so him, like so up his alley. So I was like, oh, he's gonna love this. And so that was my song idea. And what I did is I just took away what he brought to the table. Because then he got there and I had this whole chord progression and he loved it, but then he had nothing to offer because he's the chord guy. So now we're just sitting there staring at each other, trying to get lyrics, and we're both not great at lyrics. And we're just like, and I was like, oh, that was a mistake. So one, if I had Todd again over, I would find a concept and lyrics, something that I'm confident in and I don't have a progression for, or have a really boring progression or something like that. So know your strengths and weaknesses and know that person's, and bring something where the missing puzzle piece is what their thing is.
How often do you walk into a session with like a blank slate versus walking in with like, I have these ideas that like I want to go ahead and walk in prepared with if we need something?
Yeah, I always have an idea, and I think you should just, even if you don't use any of them, but you never want to be in a situation where you come in the room and they're like, cool, so do you have any ideas that you've been messing with? And you're like, no. Do you? And like, you don't want to do that. It's like, especially if you're writing for yourself. Like if I'm in a writing session, most of the time I'm writing a song that I would sing and release myself. So it's just like doing your due diligence and being prepared. You should always come in with some ideas, whether you're writing for yourself or somebody else. I think you should always have ideas. Now you can still start at a blank slate, but always be prepared and have a couple ideas that, even if it's, I've had people that are like, yeah, I was messing with this idea, and they play 2 chords and hum this like idea of a melody. Even just that, like always come with something.
Believe it or not, we only have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it went by so fast. Is there anything, I don't know, you might be different from me in this, but when I know I'm about to do something like this, I just imagine that I'm gonna have the opportunity to say this or that. Is there anything that you haven't said the past half hour that you're like, you know what, this might be a good thing for a songwriter to hear? Is there anything? You got 97 seconds and then we're going to commercial break, so.
Yeah, so I do like, I've done a lot of songwriting like lessons with people, and they'll show me their songs, and then I tell them what I would change, or just give them some tips. 99.9% of the time, when someone shows me a song and they're new at songwriting, the problem is the song isn't about something specific. I remember I brought a song when I was starting to songwrite, and I brought a song to a mentor of mine who's a brilliant songwriter. And he was like, yeah, you've got about 5 songs in there. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, it's art. You can do whatever you want, right? You can do that. He goes, but if you want people to understand what you're saying and to connect with it on a content level, you need to make sure your song is about one thing. So that and an easy test is, I would just ask the person, what's the song about? And if they had to go, well, so like then you're in trouble. It needs to be like a thesis. Like, what's the song about? Well, the song's about a a breakup, and then maybe like one layer, like a breakup, and then you realize that it was the best thing that ever happened, or you realize that now you can't sleep well, but something very succinct, and every single line needs to point to that thesis. You can't have a breakup song and then one line is about just something completely different that doesn't make sense in that scenario, even if it's really pretty and sounds cool and the analogy's cool. It has to be pointing to the topic of the song.
Right before Kyle comes up and we transition, thank you so much for your time, Clark.
Yeah, man. Great seeing you guys.
Is there anything going on in your adventure right now that you would like to share? Do you have music or tour dates or anything happening?
Yeah, I'm actually starting I just started this past Monday, and then this Monday will be the next one. But I just started doing let's actually try to do this. Oh, dang it. I was going to share my screen. But I'm doing a live masterclass every Monday to like mid-February. And this Monday is singing style, like how to sing with soul. But I'm doing like stuff on voice, on guitar, piano, songwriting, music business. I'm doing live master classes. The link's in my Instagram bio if anyone's interested, but it's $25. It's an hour, and we do open Q&A and everything. So that's kind of been my main focus. I've had a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Clark. Can we give it up for Clark? Thanks for joining us, man. Good to see you.
Hey, Clark, real quick. Yeah, I just did that joke just for him because it didn't play off the same way. It was literally just for you. Will you tell everybody, before you sign off, why they should go to Thailand on the Thailand trip with Far-Flung?
Oh, my goodness. I've gotten the opportunity to go to a lot of really cool places with Far-Flung, and then also just in my career. And my favorite trip I've ever taken outside of the country was Thailand, by far. The people are great. It's gorgeous. The weather was glorious. It was my favorite trip I've ever taken. You got to go to Thailand.
And even though we had to carry someone who's in the room that was in a wheelchair, and you carried her on your back, Brian did not help. She's shaking her head. And she was so grateful for you to help, and Brian did nothing. And Gordon, that's right. The history now. Oh,
no, that sounds right.
And you almost went to the wrong city in China because the airplane, he was on a different flight than us, and the flight like flies from one city, and then some people get off, and then the rest need to stay on, and he doesn't know Chinese, Mandarin, and he was just gonna get off, and they caught him and was like, no. Are you going here? He's like, yeah. They're like, get back on the plane. So he almost ended up in the wrong city in China.
I was all the way off the plane, and they were just speaking in Chinese to me. And I was like, where's baggage claim? And
you're not in the city you're going to meet us.
Yeah, I was like, where am I? Luckily, there was an Australian guy who lived there, but was from Australia and had lived in China for like 5 or 10 years. And he was like, hey, they do this. It's not scheduled, but they literally like think of it as like dropping a friend off at work, like on their way to whatever. Like literally they just lay in the plane, and it's like some people are dropped off and it's not scheduled. It's like under the table, and then you just stay on. And they announced that, but you don't know Chinese. And so he like helped me. If he wasn't there, I'd have probably just hung out in this random city in China.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Love you guys.
Love you.